All right. So other than me being utterly sick again and tired, I think it's about time that people stop DMing me to release track packs or to give them rails that aren't mine. To be fair, these underground ones are, but the rest aren't. And I'm pretty sure that people are trying to do other things other than just, underground stations. Now, before anybody comes at with pitchforks at me, uh, these are the same. It looks like less, but it's the same. Um, my point being is that these three rails here, these three types of rails here, are the same rail, just with different textures on them. So combining that, three turns into one, and these four turn into two. So you'll see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, technically speaking, 5 rails in a sense. Now, these rails are the same thing, just with a different texture. So we can combine those into one as well. So this would become 1, 2, 3, 4, which is what you see here. Now, I'm gonna release like a readme kind of like instruction guide with this too. It's gonna be like a script or something, maybe even a PDF file. But these rails are all, I try to make them as like customizable as possible and as low part as possible given the options. Things like the elevated tracks obviously are going to be higher in part count because it retains a lot more detail. So just keep that in mind. The only other thing, I guess, that would kind of be an issue is people who don't really know how to use the rails correctly, that is. Now, before anyone goes and thinks that the correct way to use these is to get one of them and then copy and paste it over and over again, especially for small segments like a straight track or something, you are wrong. In order for you to use these rails correctly, you need to get this tool right here called Building Tools by F3X. In fact, you can get them in the toolbox, especially if you go into the plugins section of it. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's one of the ones that show up here. If not, let me just make sure. Yeah, if it doesn't show, it's weird because for me it shows up sometimes and other times it doesn't. But oh no, it's right here. Look, see, this is what you need. Now, in the README document, I'll like give you colors and stuff of like what colors you should be using, what colors should be around, which colors for different uses, stuff like that. But essentially, there's only really a few colors that you can use on certain tracks. I mean, maybe the Pebble one here, this you could use this for like Brighton and stuff. Possibly you would be able to use this for, like in terms of color, like let's say brand new ballast that goes down in Far Rockaway and it's like a brighter color. So then you can bring this up to about 150, 150, 150 to give it a much more nicer, more vibrant color. But it's all really just trial and error, and it's different for every game. So don't expect one color that I may use to work for whatever purpose you have. And it's also worth noting that these tracks are for my scale of trains, or Joe's scale of trains as well, which is what it's based off, which goes with the player. This is not a PTA scale thing, although you could probably scale this up so that it does work with PTA trains in any event. Now, to use these rails is what I'll get to first, and then I'll like go through the customization. Pick the rail that you want. I'm going to choose this first one. And before I even copy and paste it and whatever, I want you guys to notice that when I select my rails, the right track, depending on how you're looking at it, is selected as the primary part. There's a reason for this, and I suggest that you don't change this at all. Leave it the way it is. There's a good reason why this is the case. Like, before I even show you how to use it, I might as well like explain why that's the case. The right rail is at the same level, no matter what it may be. Now, the elevated tracks, for example, they have a higher size, a bigger size, whatever, because it has an additional piece down here, which would be for the elevated beams that connect to. So essentially, all of these other rails are the same size, so this you could probably get away with, but the elevated rails are not. And in the event that you go from one style of track to the elevated rail, getting the position right would be very hard, and it would require you to kind of move by little increments until you get the rails at the correct place. Meanwhile, if I was to get this first rail and say move it all the way over here, and I need to switch from this rail to this type of rail, which is the elevated, if I copy and paste this, I would have to, without this being there, essentially move this until I get the right position, and this could be very time consuming. So because that right rail here is the primary part, all I would have to do is copy the track segment that I'm trying to connect this to through the origin position. This is in your properties tab. You can open that here in the view tab. Get the origin position and just paste it into the elevated rails. Now, it'll put it right inside of your previous rail. And if your previous rail is like 100 studs long, it'll be in the center of the segment that you chose, okay? Like you just pasted in. So it'll be in the middle. If anything, you could press F, which will focus on your object. As you can see, press F and it'll bring me to where that track is. Now, you may not see it well, but essentially, these rails are in this correct position now. If I was to move this up by 10 studs, you'll see they're in the perfect position, not even an increment off. Now, if I was to reset this, or actually, I can't do it through there. I have to actually take off the primary part here from both of these, and we do the same thing all over again. Move the track over here, and let's make sure that we reset their thing here. Move the track there, right? If I was to do the same method, look what would happen. It sits above the rail, and actually getting it into the correct position, it's a little time consuming. So to avoid that, just make sure that you don't take that off. It will help you in the long run. I promise. As you can see here. Now, how can I use these rails? Don't do what rookies do and just Control D or Control C and Control V, which is duplicate. Okay, don't just duplicate this over and over again and paste it. This might have been the Roblox standard in 2012, but it is no longer the Roblox standard here. These tracks are made so that they can help you with part count. Now, in terms of helping you with part count, instead of you having to paste straight sections over and over again, your part count will be higher in things like curves and switches due to the amount of parts that these retain. Now, for example, these are 7, okay? 7 parts per this underground track. This is 18 per elevated track. In the event that you make a curve with this, per curve segment, that is another 7 parts that is going towards the track. And granted, there are things you can do to minimize the part count from there, but it won't really be as much as just, not having these tracks in a way. Having physical tracks, you can union them all, save part count, but in terms, your collision engine would be worse, which if you don't know what collisions are, don't even worry about it. Now, because of this, you save more part count on straight sections, meaning if you're going between Pelham Parkway, let's say, and Burke Avenue, it is a straight section. There's a few hills there, but it's a straight section nonetheless, which means I can take this and scale this infinitely and still just use those 7 parts instead of duplicating this an infinite number of times and having 14, 21, and etc. amount of parts. So that's what this is for here. But on the other side, we shouldn't be duplicating it, and we should be using the F3X tools. This allows you to move any model that has a number of parts as if it was a single part. There are other plugins out there that can do this, like Studio Build Suite, but I prefer F3X because the UI is cleaner and it's just better in my opinion. Now, you can easily just go move this like that, you see, and it's scaling with it too. It takes everything with it. That's what these tracks are meant for. I've essentially scaled it to 105 studs, and you can see that my part count still remains 7 parts for this whole entire track section. So the same thing applies with the elevated tracks. To extend these, just use the F3X, plugin or any other plugin that you have, and you can extend these infinitely forever, essentially. Now, this will save you parts when it comes to straight sections, as I've stated before. So be mindful of that. If your part count soars because your game has a lot of curves, there's not much you can really do from there. You can possibly try meshing stuff. That might work. What I do in CVID is, because the tracks will be higher in part count, I try to keep the stations to a minimum amount, as minimal as possible, using different techniques such as meshing, unioning, texture usage, and other things as well. So you should definitely try to use that for yourselves, as it will help you with performance in the long run. Now, to customizability is the word I want to use. These like beam handrail things here, they have two texture options. Only one of them is on this rail right now. I will finish that after the video, obviously. But effectively, you can choose with the wires here or without the wires, and it'll be an option that you can select, like on the underground rail here. On the underground rail, there's ties 1 and ties 2. Ties 2 is transparent, which is why you can't see it. When the release comes around, it won't be, but just keep that in mind. Ties 1, you can see that has every 4 or 5 ties goes fully throughout the rail. So it's a full piece of wood instead of just one that's cut. On ties 2, on the other hand, here, which for some reason broke, I have to fix this, it seems. But essentially, no, I must have broken something. Oh wait, that's the wrong set of rails. That's why. All right, there we go. All right, on ties 2, you see, this is why making videos is great. I can actually see what I did wrong here. You can see that this has no running rail that goes, or running tie that goes through the whole thing. So these are options that you can select. Essentially, when this gets released, it'll look more like this, which you can't really see the differences in, but just know that it's there. And in the event that you need to change it, you can just delete one of them or delete the other. And here you go. Now, as for colors, say that you are doing a elevated section, but more of the newer elevated sections that use concrete instead of metal. You can just take this and change it to the Falso color, or even this color here. Hold on. Mid-gray is a good color if you're trying to do, like, you know, something like JFK Air Train kind of thing. But I would choose the mid-gray. This is a nice, calm color. It's nice. It's relaxed. If you're doing something like underground, I recommend using this color here, which this will be in the README, by the way. So you can choose the colors for that. But I recommend using this. It's a BVE styled color, and I kind of prefer it this way because it gives you the look of like, yeah, it's been dirty by dust, by all this extra stuff. So just keep that in mind. As for the third rail, these can be moved, but it is worth noting that I'll probably add an option for it. Like, I'll probably just fix it now so that it has third rails on both sides. But if I was to take this rail and just turn it off to the other side, you'll notice that, like, when you try to scale this, this will scale backwards. So I'm probably going to just add another rail so that you guys can just use that instead of having to, like, worry about moving it and then the scaling gets messed up and all this extra stuff. So I'll probably just do that to just, like, solve that. But it is just still worth noting that, say that I don't do that or I forget or whatever, be sure to remind me in the Discord server. And if not, you can just easily, I think it's 9.6 is what I did it as, get the whole TR model. Yep, 9.6 is the one, and just rotate it. And now you have third rails on both sides. But again, like I said, the problem that you would have with this is that if I was to use F3X tools and scale this, you'll see that this rail scales backwards. So I'll probably fix this when I'm doing it. So just don't worry too much about it. But yeah, it'll probably come with 2 third rails. So don't think that I'm an idiot for putting both of them on there. There's a good reason for it. The final thing, I guess, that you should know is that there are assets here, like the rails themselves, that aren't mine. And at any given point that they get archived, you're kind of on your own. The rails, I believe, NW Space K did the tie textures, and I, like the ties here, I just basically made it so that it extends all the way through for those rails, and then the other ones without it, that's all him. The rails themselves, like the physical rail instances, so both the third rail one and the running rail one, I believe that was Joe. Not sure. If you don't know Joe, he is Transit Man Joe or Paquito. Pretty sure it was him. He can confirm or deny. It's all him. But effectively, I hope this video did help. And please stop begging. Begging is cool because, you know, you let me know what you want. But at the same time, there's things that I can and can't give you, at least not yet. The same thing goes with the R142 model that some people have seen in other games that are not affiliated with this MTA group. Sure, they have it, but it's worth noting that they have it for their own groups and it's a temporary thing. We plan on releasing all of our older trains, but we have a schedule and things will take time to get there. You can use these trains for yourself no matter what group. Even if you're blacklisted from our group, you can use it. However, it is still, again, worth noting, those trains have a limit. When the R142A releases, that's when the 68 releases. When the 179 releases, that's when the 142 releases. We're doing it by train type, which means that the 143 and 160 will be a combined type because the only real difference is minor physical instances and propulsion noises. But still, just it's worth noting, again, it's something that I love to say, worth noting, that, yeah, these are scaled to my trains. Trains will release with their own time. So it's okay to ask, but just remember, some people have it for now. It's not permanent. There's things on those trains that aren't ours, which is why we can't give them out just yet. And there's also a schedule. Okay, later, losers.